Hey guys, welcome back. Hope you're doing well. And if you're new here, I'm Jim. Thanks for stopping by. Today I'm in Luminar Neo and I'm playing with the light, of course, right? Because that's what we do as photographers. We capture light. The thing I want to talk about today is how do you basically accentuate the light and show you how I would do this on a particular photo. This is basically shaping the light with intent. And so let me show you the base photo. There it is. You can see there's a bit of shadow and light play going on here. A shot from Colorado in the mountains. And there's some shadow and some dappled light in different areas across the scene, and I want to accentuate that. So I've already gone into Raw Develop and done a couple of things which has given me that photo, and now what I want to do is go in and shape the light. Now, you might be thinking, oh, that's easy. I'll just use dodge and burn, Jim, duh. No, I'm not going to use dodge and burn, and there's a reason why, and the reason why is this is actually a better way to dodge and burn. It gives you more control, and that's basically using the develop tool. Now, I've done this before, and you've probably heard this before, but dodge and burn, it's a brush tool, and that's really all it is. So you have to brush things in, and that's what it's designed for, to either brighten or darken specific areas of the photo by brushing it in. But I want to use Mask AI, which is not available in dodge and burn. It's just a brush tool. So I'm going to use Mask AI as well as some brushing, but that's all in develop. As long as you've used it already as develop raw, you can then come back and you'll have this masking option here. So the first thing I want to do is isolate that sky. So I'll go into Mask AI and I'm going to click on that and let that figure it out. And then I'm going to choose the sky and make a couple of adjustments there. Okay, it found the sky. I'm going to go ahead and click sky. You can see there's my mask. And if you want to, one thing that I often do is when you see that mask like that and it's slightly missing along the edges, what I will do is I'll come in with a brush and I'll drop the strength, and then I will drop the size of my brush and I'll just kind of paint along that area so that I kind of blend that mask into the scene, or I should say blend that sky and what I'm about to do to the sky into the mountain range. So that, in other words, I don't have a hard line between the two where the edits are going to be obvious. So just a little tip for you, that might help. Just be careful with your masking, which I'm not doing because I'm making a video. It's kind of hard for me to do both. So what I want to do with this sky is I'm going to brighten it just a little bit, and I want to cool it off just a little bit. So something like that, a little cooler, a little brighter. There it is before, and there it is now. I think that looks fine. So I'm going to go ahead and commit that. But I want to use Mask AI again. So once again, I'm going to open Develop. And this time, I'm going to go into Masking and Mask AI. And of course, it finds things much quicker the second time because it already found them the first time. I guess it kind of hangs on to them. So I'm going to click on Flora, and that's going to isolate all those trees for me, which is exactly what I wanted. So now that I've done that, I'm going to come in and I'm going to take the shadows down because all I want to do is just kind of darken those trees a little bit, because when you're playing with light, what you're doing is if you're making some things brighter and some things darker, you're creating contrast, right? These trees were already slightly dark. I want to make them a little bit darker to create a little bit more contrast, and that'll come into play a little bit more obvious here in a few minutes when I get to some of the other moves that I'm making. Now, I don't recommend going too dark or too bright. In this case, I want to darken them simply because I'm creating that contrast, but there could be instances where you wanted to brighten them. Regardless, that's what I was looking for, and Mask AI was perfect. So once again, Develop, I'm done. I'm going to open it again. This time I'm going to get a brush. Now, this is where I'm looking at some of the brighter areas and kind of where I want the light to be accentuated versus sort of ignored, right? So accentuated would be brighter and ignored would be darker. So the first place that I look is that trail. So I'm going to come in with Mask and I'm going to get a brush. And I'm going to drop the strength a little bit. And what I want to do is just kind of paint a little bit right in here. And I'm just trying to create a little bit of a visual path. Come in with the adjustment. And I'm going to brighten it. So maybe something a little bit like that. And maybe I'll come in with a mask and slightly lower strength. And maybe paint along these edges just to kind of blend that into the area around it a little bit better. I recommend taking your time and experimenting with all this because it's easy to screw it up. The good news is, of course, you can reset it at any time. But this adjustment, and I'm not going too bright, but a little bit brighter. There it is before, and there it is now, slightly brighter. And maybe that's a little too much, so I'm going to pull that down a little bit. Once you make the mask, you can adjust accordingly, maybe something like that. The other thing that's great about using Develop instead of Dodge and Burn is you have all these other controls. So I don't need to do that in this photo, but if I wanted to adjust the temperature or the saturation, vibrance, any of that, I have those controls. Just makes things easier. So now I've got a little bit better mask there, and I got that trail kind of highlighted. I'm going to go ahead and commit that, and now I'm going to come in with some of those other areas that I talked about where that light is kind of dappled. Come in with a strength of, maybe 30, and this is just all experimentation. And I'm going to come in and I'm just going to hit a little bit of a mask in some of these areas and a little bit here, maybe something like that. I see a little bit of dappled light up here. I like how it's kind of hitting that rock and that rock, maybe a little bit there. And then if you come up across here, you see there's a little bit of light kind of hitting the tops of the mountains as well. I'm going to come in and brush over some of that. Okay, so something about like that. I'm going to go ahead and just go over to my adjustments, and I'm just going to lift that exposure a little bit. You don't want to go too high because it makes it really look weird, but just I'm going to reset to 0. Just a little bit brighter. I'm just accentuating the light in those areas. So, maybe a 0.75, something like that. Nothing major, but it's taken that to that. So it's just bringing up the light there. And now, of course, I'm going to go do the opposite, which is go work on the shadows. So masking brush once again, and I generally start with a lower strength, and then I might come in and I'm just going to paint into some of the areas where the shadows already exist and just kind of accentuate them a little bit. So, this is all just shadow and light play, right? And I'm just going to come in, and I recommend adjusting the brush size just so that you don't kind of overdo it or bleed into parts of the photo that you don't want to bleed into. But here I'm just going to drop the exposure. Now again, same thing, don't go too low, but just drop the exposure a little bit, and I'm just creating contrast. So I'm just pulling down those shadows a little bit in those slightly darker areas where the clouds that are floating above are kind of having light kind of come through and hit certain parts of the photo. I'm just shaping the light, right? And I'm just hacking around, kind of experimenting until I get something that I like. I think that looks pretty good. And now I think I'm just going to hit it with a vignette, and I'm basically done. So a little bit of a vignette and maybe a slight bit of inner light, but choose the subject wisely. I want to put the subject down in here, kind of where the trail is leading. So something about like that, and the vignette before and after. I think that helps quite a bit. Let me show you the overall before and after, because I think we made a huge impact on this photo. That's what it looked like before. Again, you can see the dappled light, a little bit of light here, a little bit of shadow there, and that sort of thing. And I used Mask AI as well as brushes to come in, all with the Develop tool, to just accentuate that difference between the brighter parts and the darker parts, which is controlling the light, but that's also just creating contrast, right? So that's what I ended up with. So there it is before, and there it is after. And that's how a lot of people go in and control the light. It's effectively dodging and burning the photo, but with the Develop tool instead of dodge and burn, simply because you have more control and you have masking options besides just a brush, which for me allowed me to isolate the sky in this photo and also isolated those trees so I could do those without having to brush it in. Saves me time and effort. So one more time, before, decent shot. I like it, and a little trail leading between the trees into the mountains, dappled light and all that, and now some accentuated light. And maybe there's a little too bright in some areas, that sort of thing. Season to taste, take your time, go slow, go back and fix it if you need to. But that's how you do it, my friends. Just wanted to share that with you. Hope it gives you some ideas. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, check out that Luminar Neo video as well. And I'll see you in the next one, my friends. You guys take care, and until then, adios.